I'd like to take this moment to thank you for coming across Manhood Race Culture. I'm unsure if you're on our blog site, which is www.manhoodraceculture.com, or our YouTube channel, Manhood Race and Culture. The purpose of Manhood Race and Culture is to deal with issues that African American males, African Americans in general, and Black culture are dealing with on a daily basis. The programming that we're going to offer here is going to be aimed at illuminating African Americans and increasing the dialogue that we're dealing with in a very intelligent, somewhat cerebral way that gets beyond the common banter back and forth. We're seeking to offer solutions to Black problems, period. So, if you happen to be watching on our YouTube channel, please like, share, subscribe, push the notification button. It would be greatly appreciated. And we're trying to free our people. Thank you for visiting our channel once again. Hello, I thought I'd come on here tonight and share a few thoughts about this latest Martin Luther King national holiday. I'm always bothered by this date for a host of reasons. Most notably, that it really does not reflect the King that I know. It doesn't reflect the growth of the King that I know. And one of the more contentious things that I have with my students, and many of them are shocked to hear me when I say this, but I believe that the 1963 March on Washington speech, organized by Asa Philip Randolph, was the worst moment that King could have possibly had. And especially that litany that he goes into, the Mahalia Jackson called upon, I have a dream litany, where, you know, he goes and he talks about a colorblind society and little Black boys, little white girls. You've heard that litany. I hate that moment. And the reason that I hate that moment so vociferously is because people behave as if King was killed that night. King is not assassinated until April 4th, 1968. So we have a nearly 5 year expansive moment for King to develop, to grow, to refine his ideas. So that 63 King, in that little snippet, once again, that makes this perfect soundbite that even hardcore ardent racists on the far right have seized to fight against any type of legislation dealing with race in America. And keep in mind where we're at right now, where we're even discussing the idea of should race be mentioned under this boogeyman concept of critical race theory, is diametrically opposed to the King that I know. The King that I know is the one that quite simply said, he warns the nation. He says, do not be unduly persuaded when you see white parents falling out in the middle of a public park because a Negro child is swinging on a swing next to their precious white child. Integration of a park is easy, it's simple, it costs nothing. The King that I know talked about winning with the civil rights movement, that it was a two-stage process. The first stage was gaining equality on the law books of America, which was achieved in 65 when LBJ signed the 1965 Voting Rights Act, which followed the 64 Civil Rights Act. And of course, we have another Voting Rights Act almost immediately after that. And we're ironically trying to get yet another Voting Rights Act. Okay, so we've kind of lost ground on even the first part of what King says as far as creating racial equality and racial justice in this nation. But the more important part, which is the exercise of that equality, it's the reason why when you ask Black folk, are you equal in America? They invariably come up with no. Despite the fact that there is no visual, no actual difference according to the law. You know, I know, we all know in this nation that when you go in front of that court and you are not a privileged white person, you better duck because the book is coming. So the exercise of that equality, which King says is the second step to winning at civil rights. Additionally, that 63 king, that I have a dream king, is nowhere the same king that is speaking out against the Vietnam War. Nowhere do we talk about in these celebrations of these so-called celebrations of King, the idea that King is actually addressing the issue of reparations when he says, it would seem to me that a nation that has done something against the Negro for so long would not have a problem with doing something for the Negro, at least for a period of time. So once again, I have to go through it almost feels like Groundhog Day. Every year, I go through the hijacking and further denigration of who the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. actually was. King is so much more than that colorblind, I have a dream moment. And if I could take the privilege of speaking for King, I would say quite simply that at the present moment, King would be aghast at where we're at on the racial frontier. The fact that we can't even talk about race anymore in school. You can't talk about the actual history that this nation was built upon. The fact that when you look at the very pillars of this nation, there isn't a moment where you can come up with a logical, just argument that says that African Americans are not point blank the greatest Americans this nation has ever seen. The first man to die in the American Revolution, Crispus Attucks, is a Black man. Every war that we fought, Black folk have fought for and received very little benefit prior to the desegregation of the US military. And yet we still believe, yet we still serve, yet we still work towards what King would term a beloved community. It's not Black folk that we need to be questioning in regards to their patriotic status, their loyalty. It's individuals who would go up into the Capitol and basically try to execute a coup. So on this Martin Luther King Day, my soul is troubled as every other Martin Luther King Day, maybe even more so now. Because honestly, as a nation, we are nowhere near even looking at, discussing this nation's foremost social cancer, and it is racial bias. So I'm sure it's a great balm. I'm sure it's a great feel-good moment to get together and get dressed up, go eat breakfast, what have you, listen to a little speech and pretend that you're honoring Dr. King in his legacy. The truth of the matter is that radicalized King, as they would refer to him as, would not be pleased with where Black folk are, what they are doing, and their disorganization amongst Black leadership to really strike a significant blow to improving not just Black lives, but those of working class Americans, regardless of their race or ethnicity. So once again, I believe that King's 63 speech has eclipsed the last 4.5 years of his life when his most significant and profound growth occurs. And if I could, I would encourage you to read King's work. Why We Can't Wait. Where do we go from here? Chaos or community? It's in those moments that you're going to find and uncover the true king. Not this propagandized takeover, the hijacking of his legacy that we see occurring around the clock by those who would spit in King's face, would stand against King and anything that he was saying if he were alive today. Thank you for visiting Manhood, Race, Culture Interactive. Have a blessed night.